Hey everyone, Pastor George here with today's Bible study. And today in Bible study, we looked at Judges chapter 19, an infamous book from the book of Judges. So of those of you who follow this channel regularly, you might remember that I actually did a new thing on this chapter because this chapter was used in one of our denominations. Oh, gross, fly just landed on me. Yeah. Denominations exams, or ordination exams, and it caused a huge uproar because this particular story is so evil and so violent that a lot of people who did it or took the exam were shocked that they chose it and didn't like being kind of confronted with the pretty dark and mature themes of this passage. But that's not necessarily what we're going to talk about today. All that is to say is that this is not a super, unless you know your Bible well, this is not a super well-known story from the Bible. If you don't, you don't teach this one in Sunday school. Let's just say that much. Most people don't. And what's interesting is there's a story very similar to it that many of us know from the book of Genesis. And if you read Judges 19, you'll see what that is. But one of the important things to note about Judges 19 is that this is not a story that's being held up as a good thing. Oftentimes, I believe that people think that just because it's in the Bible, that means God approves of it. And this is one of those stories, or really the book of Judges entirely, is one of those books where there's a lot of things that happen, but if you actually look at the text and look at what it's saying, it doesn't mean that God is commanding that these things be done or that these things aren't sinful, right? God uses them for his glory and he's sovereignly at work and things like that. That I'm not going to deny. But I think we'd be fooling ourselves if you think God is pleased with Israel during this time. So this is a new story, and it's not the story about the other Levite that we were just with. So there's two kind of narratives that end the book of Judges, and the first one is about Micah and his idol and the Danites, and then there's a Levite that comes and serves him of the line of Moses, and this is a new story. But both of them begin the same way, which is in those days Israel had no king. And remember, that's the new motif of Judges, right? It's not that Israel goes back to doing what's evil. It's now that they just have no king and they're acting terrible all the time. So you have this Levite, and he has a concubine. Already you can see that this is kind of a odd arrangement, right? The concubine would be a slave, most likely, that you would keep and for sexual purposes. And you could have legitimate children through concubines. They were just the women themselves who were concubines were just considered kind of second class below the wives themselves. And so this concubine is unfaithful to him, right? She leaves him. She goes back to her parents' home in Bethlehem. And you already have something very important here, that a person who from Bethlehem has been mentioned. And one of the important things to remember here is that this is going to set up for us a conflict that is going to take place in the following books of the Bible between Saul and David. Because Saul is from the tribe of Benjamin and David is from the tribe of Judah. So here already you see Bethlehem of Judah mentioned, right? That this is a woman who is from the tribe of Judah and she's been taken as a concubine, slave, by a guy from Ephraim. Again, not a good thing that's happening here. And so he comes back to get her. And so he brings her gifts, right? He's welcomed and he stays there. And the dad keeps trying to get him to stay. He doesn't want the Levite to leave with his daughter, but he eventually does. Now, the man leaves and he goes towards Jebus, that is Jerusalem, or Jebus. And when that's important to know because Jerusalem is not, even though we associate it with this, right? It is not an Israelite city now. The Benjaminites, which is the tribe Saul is from, fail to conquer all of the land that they were given because they don't follow what God wants them to do. And so they fail to conquer Jerusalem. Jerusalem is something that is only going to fall into the hands of the Israelites and become associated with the temple and things like that when David takes it. So the city of Jerusalem is not in Israelite hands, and this is a Gentile city. So that's why when they get there, right, one of the slaves says to him, let's stay here. And he goes, no, I don't want to stay with people who aren't Israelites, right? We're going to go to Gibeah. Who else is from Gibeah? Saul is from Gibeah. So I'm usually, a lot of the story is focused on what the tragic and evil thing that happens. And it's important to remember that. But one of the things when you read this under the surface is understand that there's also a foreshadowing, a political angle to this story that is going to be playing out, right? Because what happens is you have this contest between these two kings, right? There's no king in Israel. Who's going to take over? Saul first, and then David. And although Saul proves that, that he's maybe not the king that David needs, but also, or Israel needs, but also David, even though he's good, still proves that he's not the king from the line of Judah that actually is going to save Israel. That would be Jesus Christ, right? But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So they go instead to Gibeah, right? Gibeah is supposed to be a city of Israelites. They're supposed to care for other Israelites. You'd think they get there, they're at the city square, they're sitting around. This is a way that you would show that you needed a place to stay. No one takes them in for the night. So anyway, an old man, right, from the country of Ephraim, not a native, basically, right, then invites them to stay with him. So this is a foreigner, not a Gentile, but not someone who is supposed to be there, right? Like this is he's moved there, I guess he lives there, but he's not native to Gibeah. So you'd imagine that he should not be the first person to represent the hospitality of Gibeah. So, he brings the Levite in and he gives them places to stay and his concubine and his things like that, right? And he lets them stay with him. And while they're enjoying themselves, men of Gibeah come, surround the house, they pound at the door, and they want to rape the Levite who's there. And this should remind you of another story, namely the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? When they're there and you have the people come and demand that the angels come out so they can have sex with them, right? And so you have this really evil thing that's going to happen here, right? Not something that the Lord is approving of. And just like the last time, right, you have this dialogue between the guy who owns the house, and in Genesis it's Lot, and in this one it's this guy from Ephraim, and he says, hey, here, you can take my daughter and my concubine, right, and his concubine, take them, don't do anything to him, right? There's all this thing about guest right and things like that. And again, the commentary here is not interested in commenting, well, not saying that this is good behavior, right? That's not what it's about. Really what it's about is it's drawing this clear distinction between two of the cities that are seen as the most wicked, depraved things in the Bible, things that you would say, the Israelites would easily at this time be able to say, well, that's the nations, that's the Gentiles who act like this. We don't act like this at all. But they do. That's how far away they've gotten, right? They don't even look like Israel anymore. The whole purpose of the law is that Israel is distinct among the nations and shows God's light through their distinction. Here, they look exactly like everybody else. And in some places, they're worse, right? The underlying theme is that if they had gone to Jerusalem, this wouldn't have happened. It's ironic that it happens because it's Israelites who are doing it. And he thought he was going to be safe. So the guy takes his concubine and he sends her outside. They rape her and abuse her through the night, and they don't stop until dawn. And at dawn, he shows no interest in her, right? And then he comes out and he finds her dead. And he tells her to get up and go, and she doesn't. And so he figures out that she's dead that way. So he puts her on a donkey and gets to home. And when he goes to home, he cuts her up limb by limb and sends her throughout the areas of Israel. Now, some people, I only discovered this as I was doing a little bit of reading on this for the study So I always just assumed that this was 12 pieces for the 12 tribes of Israel, and that could be it. But really, it doesn't say that. It seems as though this is intended for everyone to see in Israel, right? Not just the 12 tribes or something like that, but just have them scattered. And so the goal here is to show that Israel is disunited. And one of the things that's noticed, right, is everyone who sees it says such a thing has never been seen or done. And I think that this isn't referring to the attack that the Benjaminites did to this Levite, and well, to his concubine, really. Rather, just to do like just what he's done in response to that has been so so heinous and mutilative and violent that they are just shocked into listening to him. And that's going to set up what's going to happen next, because this is going to lead to civil war between the tribes of Israel. Right? We've had fighting before between the tribes, but now it's going to become a big fight, and it's going to be between Benjamin and the rest of the tribe of Israel, and we're going to see what happens. So just remember that this is not a story that is supposed to show how good life in Israel is, and that this is a positive experience. It's the exact opposite. It shows how far Israel has fallen spiritually and morally, and it's going to take a king in order to set everything right. Saul will not be up to the task to do that. David will do it, but not always do well. But it will be David's descendant, Jesus, who will ultimately fulfill this call for a king who is going to, this anointed one who is going to make Israel pure and establish Israel forever. And he does that through the church. And so it's just an important thing to remember that, right? That this is a setup. This is how this story points to Jesus, is that this is the thing that happens in our hearts when we do not acknowledge God as king and do not hold Christ as king, right? We begin to fall off and abandon the things, the good things that we are supposed to do. So that's what we talked about today. I hope the rest of you have a wonderful, wonderful Wednesday. I will see you tomorrow for a new thing. Peace out.